Thank you for joining me. We are going to look at the measurement of IFRS 5. Measurement means what amount. So before it is a IFRS 5 asset, you will measure it in terms of the asset's own relevant standard. So maybe it's IAS 14, investment property, or IAS 16, your PPE. Then after reclassification, so we've met our classification criteria. On that day, we have to make sure that our asset, IFRS 5 asset, is sitting at the lower of the carrying amount or the fair value less cost to sell. And if I have to write down my asset, my IFRS 5 asset, non-current asset held for sale, to the lower of, and let's say it's fair value less cost to sell, then that decrease in my non-current asset held for sale. So I will credit non-current asset held for sale. The other leg will be impairment loss, P&L, and in IFRS 5 it is always impairment loss, P&L, even though maybe it was a IAS 16 asset on the revaluation model and you still have a revaluation surplus balance. Still, this in IFRS 5, you're writing down to fair value less cost to sell. That will occur only in impairment loss P&L. Subsequently, you have to remeasure to the fair value less cost to sell, and if that is subsequently a higher amount than your previous fair value less cost to sell, then you can reverse your impairment loss. However, it is limited to any cumulative impairment losses recognized in terms of IAS 36, but also reverse to any previous impairment losses in terms of IFRS 5. So all cumulative impairment losses that this asset previously had, your reversal is limited to that amount. If the asset is only sold after 1 year, the cost to sell must be discounted. I think Blantyre is an example of this one, and any increase in my present value due to the passage of time will be finance cost in P&L. So I will debit finance cost P&L and I will capitalize it against my non-current asset held for sale. So that means I'm going to credit non-current asset held for sale. Remember, let's say your cost to sell was 200 Rand, but because it was sold only after 1 year, the present value is now 100 Rand. Then let's say your fair value was 1 million. Because you now only deduct the 100 Rand from the million, because you have to deduct the present value, your fair value less cost to sell is 900 Rand. So therefore, I will only, if I have to measure it lower of carrying amount or fair value less cost to sell, I will only then use the 900. But now, over a year, my present value will increase to the 200. And do you agree if I now say fair value less cost to sell, 1 million less 200, now it's suddenly 800. So my fair value less cost to sell will decrease as my cost to sell will increase. And therefore, I will immediately then capitalize it against the non-current asset held for sale. That means credit non-current asset held for sale, because I have to decrease my non-current asset held for sale as my fair value less cost to sell decreased. But look at Blantyre for an example. The following assets falls outside the scope of IFRS 5's measurement requirements. So this means these assets, it can be classified as IFRS 5 assets. However, I will still measure it in terms of the relevant standard. For example, here, investment properties on the fair value model. So I will still measure it in terms of IAS 40. So I'm not going to measure it the lower of the carrying amount or fair value less cost to sell. Please work through your example 10 in your gripping GARP. For example, of land classified as investment property and it's measured using the fair value model. I think in your Blantyre question, there's also a good example of investment property on the fair value model, and you are now using the measurement of IAS 40, but it is classified as IFRS 5.